Dr. Tom Keefe, I wanted to talk to you today about the upcoming election, but not just that one day. I want to talk to you about the latest developments with the president, with the campaign, with voting, because I have questions. And I know if I have questions, there are others elsewhere that probably have questions. So I figured who better than Dr. Tom Keefe, political scientist extraordinaire, historian extraordinaire, to talk about my questions about the election and the candidates. So
let's do it.
All right. So first and foremost, there is the issue of the president having. All right. So let's bring it back to some. This is all current, but the news of the day, and this is going to be a meaty topic, Dr. Keefe. So unfortunately, our president has contracted COVID-19. And when the news broke, of course, rightfully, everybody has concern about another human being being perhaps gravely ill, and nobody wants that. But now news conversation, pundit conversation in particular, has turned to the what ifs of this situation, and the phrase that's going around is line of succession. Mm-hmm. The administration is denying that they're having these conversations about line of succession, but it's in the cultural consciousness, right?
It's in the Constitution too.
It's in the Constitution too. So we do have to have a plan in place, and all presidents have plans in places. I noted on your Facebook post yesterday, I believe, or the day before, follow Dr. Tom Keefe, that there have been moments in our history, whether we were aware of them or not, where the vice president has stepped in for a president undergoing surgery, etc. So let's get down to the nuts and bolts of the worst case scenario here, with about 30 days left until the election. Hypothetical, of course, I'm not wishing this on anybody, but if President Trump were health-wise unable to continue, or Zeus forbid he pass away, what's going to happen to us?
So a little bit of historical context. We know that if the president dies, the vice president becomes president of the United States. 8 times in our country's history, the president has died. 4 times the president was assassinated. 4 times the president died of natural causes. The first time it happened, William Henry Harrison died after only about 30 days in office, and nobody knew what to do. They kind of knew that the vice president was supposed to be president, but they didn't like him, and they tried to prevent him from becoming president, and they actually made fun of him. He had a nickname. His nickname, instead of being Your Excellency, Mr. President John Tyler, they called him His Ascendancy because he ascended to the presidency. So that as context, we did not have anything in place as to what happens if the vice president dies, or what happens if the president dies, the vice president becomes president, and then that president dies. So with the reflection on FDR's 4 elections as president of the United States, and the fact that he died in office, we amended the Constitution. And in amending the Constitution, we put a number of things in, one of which is called the line of succession. So currently the line of succession goes on forever. We will never run out of people to become president, because they were also afraid of the Cold War, nuclear war, and the Russians. So currently the order of succession goes President of the United States, Vice President of the United States, Speaker of the House, which a lot of people don't know is true, and or is potentially problematic because you could have a speaker that's of the opposite party, like we do today. More concerning is the 4th person is the president pro tempore of the Senate. And just a little fun fact, the way you get to be president pro tempore of the Senate is you're the oldest person in the party in power. I feel like if we were in a national crisis and the president was dead, the vice president was dead, and the Speaker of the House was dead, we probably don't want the next guy up or next woman up to have gotten their job by being old. So I'm not a fan of number 4. Number 5 then resorts to the cabinet, and it goes through in order of succession of the establishment of that cabinet position. That is also problematic. The first couple go fine. Number 1 is Secretary of State. Number 2 is Secretary of the Treasury. Number 3 is Department of Defense. And 4 is Interior. No, 4 is Justice. 5 is Interior. That's fine. But in 2001, we made a cabinet level position called Homeland Security. I feel like maybe Homeland Security should be a little higher ranking than Secretary of Agriculture if we're under a national crisis. So we do have this codification of the line of succession. But another couple of lines in that amendment, specifically Section 3 and Section 4. And what we're talking about is the 25th Amendment, by the way. In Section 3 says that the President of the United States can send a letter to Congress saying that he or she is incapable of continuing the office of President, at which point the Vice President becomes the acting President of the United States. And with another letter, the President can write to Congress saying, I am now prepared to resume the rights and duties of the office of the President. Section 4 is what we're talking about in many ways, because I don't think what we know of President Trump's personality or any politician's personality, how many politicians do we know that step away and give up power?
Not at all.
Section 4 says that the Vice President of the United States can call a vote of the President's cabinet. Remember, the President's cabinet is chosen by the President. Those are the President's people. So the Vice President can call a vote by the cabinet of the President of the United States, and majority rules, the cabinet can remove the President from office.
Wow.
This was a really popular TV show in the early 2000s. It was called 24. A lot of the plot was based on the 25th Amendment. And so what we're looking at right now is President Trump is in the presidential suite at Walter Reed Military Hospital. He has all of the technical and communicative skills and access to continue to run the presidency from that suite, just as you can run the presidency from Air Force One, right? You don't have to be in the White House. However, if he is put on a ventilator, part of the medical procedure of being put on a ventilator is to take anesthesia and sedatives.
Right.
Do you want the President of the United States to be on sedatives and be put under it? Do you want the President of the United States to be on anesthesia, sedatives, and having a ventilator down his throat? It limits his ability to think cognitively,
right,
decision making, and even communicating a decision, even if it was cognitively cogent.
Right.
So, twice in the history of the United States, the president has given up his presidential power. In fact, one of those presidents gave it up twice. So after World War II and after the death of FDR, we changed the Constitution to have this process Section 3 and Section 4 available. It was never used until Ronald Reagan's term. When Ronald Reagan went under, and he was under sedatives and anesthesia, H.W. Bush became president of the United States as acting president. Then we had H.W. Bush and then President Clinton. And then twice during the presidency of George W. Bush signed over his powers as president under Section 3. And Vice President Dick Cheney was president of the United States, acting president of the United States twice during that presidential term. There are legitimate, nonpartisan reasons that Mike Pence should become acting president of the United States, depending on the treatments that President Donald J. Trump is receiving at Walter Reed. So this gets made into a partisan issue, not because of the medical procedure, but because of the closeness of the election. President Trump has used the health of his opponents, particularly Hillary Clinton in 2016, when she had pneumonia, and Joe Biden's age, and tying his age and his stuttering problem to mental lack of faculty. Right. So that's the dynamics, that's the optics, is you have a president of the United States who became president by criticizing Hillary Clinton's health and is running for re-election, criticizing Joe Biden's health. And now, 30 days-ish to the president being up for re-election, he himself is in a hospital. And he himself might be taking sedatives and anesthesia, which might limit his cognitive faculties. And I guess I'd finish this point by also saying that the President of the United States, it's being reported, he is taking experimental medicine. In this, in this country, we have a stringent policy of using experimental medicine on human populations. Like, the reason it's experimental is because it hasn't been approved.
Right.
President of the United States is taking medicine that has not been approved. And that's terrifying, regardless of party.
Absolutely. So if he were to be intubated, be unconscious, is that an automatic transfer of power to Mike Pence, or do we have to enact a vote?
It has to be enacted. In fact, in my lifetime, the most serious problem that has faced the health of the President of the United States was the assassination attempt on President Ronald Reagan. President Ronald Reagan was shot. Ronald Reagan could barely talk, but again, if you know anything about Ronald Reagan, he's a very, very funny man. While they're incubating him in the hospital emergency room, he's telling jokes, by the way. I just have to tell you the joke he told. They're trying to put him under because he's shot, okay? The President of the United States has bullets in him. He's on a stretcher. He's going into ER. They're trying to put him under sedatives. He puts up his hand to stop them, and they say, "What is it, Mr. President? Mr. President, what is it?" And Ronald Reagan goes, "Are you guys Democrats or Republicans?"
Nice.
So at that moment, he's shot. And we found out later he was closer to dying than the press was told by the White House staff. And it was one of the members of the White House, not the vice president, Al Haig, who came out famously and said, "I'm in charge." And he was shortly thereafter removed because it was seen as a power attempt to remove power from H.W. Bush, the genuine legal inheriting authority as acting president of the United States. So what I'm saying, Dr. Black, is it's not automatic. And that even when Reagan was assassinated, when it should have been a moment for us all to say, let's just do it and make it automatic, and it still became a partisan issue.
Well, we've been talking for almost an hour, and I want to be respectful of all of our time. So I want to give you final word. What closing thoughts do you have in terms of the election, our current situation with unstable health of the president? What do we as informed citizens need to know to be prepared for this election coming up?
As Americans, not as Democrats or Republicans, as Americans, what you want to look for and what you want to hope for and pray for if you follow a religion, you want the outcome of the election to be outside of doubt. You want it to be a blowout, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, whether it's President Trump or Vice President Biden, who becomes the next leader of the United States. You want something beyond the 270 to win. There are 538 votes in the Electoral College. 270 becomes president of the United States by mathematical majority. What you want is something about 300 or higher. Currently, the polls indicate that Vice President Biden can safely assume that he's going to get about 320 votes in the Electoral College. There are about 6 swing states that we're watching pretty closely. Those states are North Carolina, Florida, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Ohio, and Wisconsin. All of those states are leaning towards Joe Biden, except for Florida, which was leaning towards Joe Biden and is now leading back to toss-up, and Ohio, which has been leaning Trump all along. So out of the 6 swing states, Joe Biden is favored in 4 of the 6 swing states. If he was to take those 4 swing states, then he would be looking at an electoral victory of about 370, 100 more votes, 20% more votes than needed to become president. And again, not about Democrats and Republicans, but about Americans believing in their government. I think a 100-point win in the Electoral College combined with a popular vote win is the thing that we can hope for in order to, whether we're happy of the outcome or not, to believe in the outcome or not. If we have a close electoral vote, in particular, if we have another election where the winner of the Electoral College does not have the popular vote, then we are in a bad place. And our republic is at stake. The only thing that makes America great is the fact that Americans believe in the American government. If Americans don't believe in this government, then we're nothing more than a banana republic. And I want to close by saying, people often ask me who my favorite president is. And I don't know, in many ways, personality-wise and accomplishment-wise, the answer is probably Harry S. Truman is my favorite president. However, who do I think the most important president ever in American history is? And the answer is John Adams. And yet, nobody talks about John Adams. You go to the American Historians' annual convention, they vote on the presidents every convention. The first three always come out the same: Washington, Lincoln, FDR, in that order. And then we see the top 10 is relatively stable. Nobody talks about John Adams. But John Adams is the most important president the United States has ever had. In 1788, George Washington was elected for his first term. Vice President Adams was his runner-up. Washington was elected again, re-elected in 1792, and again, John Adams was the runner-up and was his vice president, as was constitutionally legal at the time. In 1796, Vice President John Adams and Secretary of State Thomas Jefferson ran against each other. It was brutal. They were friends, they became enemies, and didn't speak again for the rest of their lives.
Ooh.
John Adams won that election, and his vice president was, under the Constitution at the time, Thomas Jefferson, who he wasn't speaking to now. 4 years later, it's a rematch. Thomas Jefferson wins. And Thomas Jefferson, the vice president of the United States, beats John Adams, the president of the United States. The president of the United States, who controls Congress, who had passed the Alien and Sedition Acts, making it legal for him to arrest Jeffersonians. The president of the United States, John Adams, who controls the military and is commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the United States of America. And John Adams said, Thomas Jefferson won. And John Adams retired and went back to Quincy, Massachusetts. And that's what makes America great. The peaceful transition of power. And that's what's under threat this election, November 3rd, 2020.
Excellent. And how do we ensure that blowout vote, or that blowout victory?
Vote. Vote, 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 vote. I don't care who you vote for. Vote. Vote, 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 vote.
I'm sorry, was that vote?
Vote.
Vote. Yes, absolutely vote. Everybody vote. It is your right. It is an important right, and absolutely, please vote. Dr. Keefe, thank you so much for today. You have certainly helped educate me on things I needed education on, and I look forward to having another conversation with you in the near future once our election takes place, or perhaps even before, if more unexpected events happen and we have to bring in another Constitution scholar to help clarify it for us. So thank you, and look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Dr. B.